Woodturning with Tim is made possible by these fine sponsors.
The American Beauty Tim uses was made by Robust Tools. All our lathes have a 7-year warranty. Our tool wrists feature a hardened rod on top. Lots of sizes to fit your lathe. Robust, because the making matters.
Thompson Lathe Tools. Welcome to a new level of professional wood-turning tools. Made by a woodturner, for woodturners.
Tops. Everybody loves tops. And today we're making a really special one. It has a cherry shaft, and then the top body is made of acrylic that we are actually going to make today in the shop. It's a really cool process, and I thought you'd like to learn how to do it. This stuff is Alumilite. It is a 2-part resin that you mix together, plus you can put colors in it to make any color you want. You can see over here I have several samples that I've been playing with that I've made recently. And I had blue and green that I was playing with. You can get any color under the rainbow. It is really neat stuff. And you can actually see some shine in there. Well, that's actually metal powder, aluminum metal powder. So it's really unlimited. It all depends upon your imagination. Now, my buddy Curtis Seebeck, he has, I'm going to read this to make sure I get it right. He has a company called Turntex Woodworks. He came up with something called cactus juice, which is a stabilizer for punky wood and such. But also, he's gotten into this stuff called Alumilite, which is a 2-part resin that you mix together, and then it forms the acrylic once it goes into a process. And the process is, we have to use a pressure pot. And a pressure pot is literally that. It is almost like a pressure cooker, but it's industrial size. So you put your stuff in there, you add air pressure to it, and the pressure causes all the bubbles to come out of the material, so then it's a nice solid piece. But anyway, looks like it's a complicated process, but it's not. It takes a lot of stuff to get it going, so let me clear off the table and we'll start the process. I am assembling right now my form, I guess that's what you call it, that we're going to put the Alumilite resin into. You know, if the drill bit stayed in the drill, jeez, or the chuck or the Phillips or whatever, that's good. Anyway, you have to have something to pour the Alumilite into, and so you have to make a form. Well, you have to pick a certain material so the Alumilite won't stick to the form. And this is a very scientific, very expensive piece of material. Got it at Sam's for like 10 bucks. It's a cutting board that they sell. It's a 1/2 inch thick. It's made of, I don't know, some sort of plastic, some sort of resin. And you can cut this on a table saw and it cuts like butter. It is really cool stuff. Now, you're limited on the size of this thing by the size of your pot, because it's got to go inside. Pots are round, so if it's that far across, you know, you're going to bring it in some if you're putting a square thing in. But anyway, we'll get into that a little bit more. But on this, it's real simple. You take it to the table saw, you cut it, and then I drilled with a countersink so the heads go into there. I really didn't have to do that, but I guess it's the anal part of me that wanted to do that. And so you're just basically forming a box here. Now, we have in the past used acrylic, and we've done it a couple times this season already. And the acrylic we're using today is a whole lot different in that acrylic we were using on the other shows, if we go the right direction it goes in, was industrial. It was meant for tables and for things of that nature, like windows and shelving. And so it's a different feel, a different texture. This stuff comes out a lot softer, is a lot more friendly to turn. And the other cool thing, like I said before, is you get to make it any color you want. You can make the blank any shape you want within reason. And so it gives you a lot more freedom. You're not working with somebody else's material. You can actually make this stuff. They make a liquid clear version of this, so you make your own optically clear acrylic too. So you're not just limited to putting color in it. But anyway, oh, one thing I want to mention too is another buddy of mine, Keith Lackner. He sent me this blank a couple of months ago. I'm still working on a project to come out with it because I don't want to waste this. But this is Alumilite resin that has been cooked in a pressure pot. But before he did that, this is where that cactus juice that Curtis sells comes in. He stabilized this blank so it has resin inside of it. And you can see how you can take a piece of burl or something that's not a blank that's the right shape to make something out of it, and you can rescue it or make it into something completely different by then building a form to go around it, putting the Alumilite in and putting it in a pressure pot. And it's incredible. Like I said, you're only limited by your imagination on what you can do. Well, anyway, I've got to this point, so we have our form. The next thing we got to do is start mixing the materials, and on that we're going to be on a timer, so I'm going to clear the area out again and get things set up. What I'm putting on here right now is called mold release. I just picked this up at Michael's, my craft store, but you can buy more official stuff from different sites. Curtis sells it. It's just kind of like putting a little bit of oil or wax in there so that it releases the mold a little bit easier. The funny thing is I really didn't notice any difference. I forgot to put it in the other night and it popped out. So this material is really cool. So it's really slippery, so it lets the blank come out okay. Well, you get to see it looks a little bit like Breaking Bad. I have a scale here, and we're going to start mixing stuff. So I've got my scale off. I'm putting a clear solo cup on here, and I'm turning this on. This will zero out, so the weight of the cup is not added in, as you can see. So what I have to do here is work rather kind of not rapidly, but work quickly. And my scale decided just to go to... Try that again. My scale has started adding numbers. Anyway, so I'm going to take Alumilite A here, and I'm going to put in a healthy, probably, I would say, it's a 20-ounce cup. I'm going to put in about 8 ounces because that's number one. There we go. So I got 8 ounces there. I'm going to shift out cups and do a second one because why not go swing for the fences? We're going to make 2 different colors. You have, with this batch that I'm using, 7 minutes to get everything mixed once you put the 2 parts together and get it into the pressure pot. It sounds like you're really under a big crunch of time, but you're not. So anyway, there's 8 ounces in there. I'm going to take the B, and I'm going to put it in, and put in, we're going to go up to probably 1 pound, I guess. That would be 16 ounces. And you can see, look inside there, you'll see that it's all muddy and mushy and everything. It doesn't look good, right? Well, that's why Curtis suggests that you use these clear cups, because it helps you see once you have things mixed right. There we go. I'm going to take this one, put it on. So that one's going to be either blue or green, and this will be the other color. There we go. It is kind of like some sort of chemistry class gone wrong. I don't smell any fumes on this stuff, by the way. This is one of the few things I've ever messed with where you don't have to have ventilation, and that which makes it really, really nice. Now, one thing Curtis really suggested highly was that you use a spatula to mix this stuff up. Well, if you guys are like me, you know the second you take the spatula out of the kitchen, you're in deep trouble. So I'm not going to do that. We'll put this over here, and this is where we start going. Now, I would recommend, though, go to a little store and buy yourself a spatula, because it makes it a lot easier to mix this stuff. It moves it really fast. You can also scrape the sides a lot easier than you can on this, the way it is right now. This thing doesn't go to the side very well. But as I keep whipping it in there, you can see all of a sudden it starts to look more optically clear. Hold that up a little bit, see? Nice and clear. It's got bubbles, but we're not worried about that. Now look at this one, you can see now the difference. It's all muggy. Kind of looks like water that you get out of the sink after a few days. Anyway, got to mix this up. So like I said, I'm on a timer. What happens is a chemical reaction starts to happen and this heats up a bit. So it's like with any epoxy or anything like that, 2-part that you mix, you got some heat because the chemicals start to react and do their thing. So I want to make sure I get it really mixed well. Okay, that's looking pretty good. No, there's got to be good. It can't be pretty good. So anyway, here is some of the Alumilite color. This is a green dye. They recommend that you put a drop in for every ounce of the A side. So in other words, if I put 8 ounces there, they recommend 8 drops here. But one thing I found out is that for what I was doing, I wanted to make something a little more clear. So I'm only going to put in 4 drops. If you're doing a pen blank, you would want to put in at least 8 drops because you don't want the barrel of the pen, the brass part, showing through. And that would make it opaque. Yeah. And so this is going to be more transparent. So that's cool. So we'll start mixing up the colors here. And watch how quickly that turns green. I mean, that is dark. That's just 2 drops, or 4 drops of green in 16 ounces of liquid. And the nice thing is that mixes up really quickly. We're going to kind of clean that off. This is all going to blend here in a little bit anyway. So there we go. Now we got blue. And now for the coup de grace, we're going to make it sparkle. And to make it sparkle, they have Alumilite, which is aluminum powder. Doesn't take much. Put a little in there. Put a little in there. This stuff will get everywhere if you sneeze. And believe me, I know. We're going to mix that up. It wants to float right off the bat. But once you get it going, kind of put it down. That's where the spatula would be really helpful. Look at how that's starting to glimmer inside. So we're actually putting shimmer into the blue. Isn't that cool? And you don't have to get a perfect mix on it, because if you just keep it kind of in there like that, it's going to have swirls. If you tried to mix it perfectly, it might not work even. I don't think I've ever gotten close to getting it perfectly mixed. But it also maybe just give it an even effect, which wouldn't be as cool. I put a little bit more in here than I probably should have. The aluminum, believe it or not, likes to float. The only time that ever happened is when I dropped my beer can in the water in the river and it floated. But anyway, keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. So we are probably at about 4 minutes, 5 minutes into this, so we're still doing good. I can feel a little bit of heat on the cup as I'm touching it though, so I know I'm getting close here. So we're going to just take this off, clean that out for a second, we'll clean that up later. Okay, here comes the fun part. See if I can do this where Brian can see it. You ready? Here we go. We're just going to pour it in together. So we got blue and we got green going in. And it's up to you at this point. You can be very happy with what nature did by just pouring it in, or you can do this. You can come in here and swirl it around. And by swirling it around, you can get some neat effects going. So, there we go. That looks pretty good. That's a nice mix. Now, one trick. Oops, I don't have a trash can over there. I forgot, I moved it. One thing you got to keep in mind is when you put this stuff in the pressure pot, it's liquid, right? This is my very first blank I made. Nice and thick, huh? Not so thick. So it took me a while to figure out where I could get a flat spot in my shop, so I actually had to shim up a chair to get it right. Well, this is where Curtis is even more help. On his site, he has videos and instructions on how to do all this. He also has plans for how to build this little carrier, because trying to drop that into that pressure pot is hard to do. You're going to spill it. So what this does, it gives you this neat little carrying case. Take all that liquid and slide it right in there. Get it to go in. I'm hitting something. Oh, a piece of Alumilite. There we go. So now I got my own little carrier. Pretty cool, huh? So I can take this over here. We're going to drop it in the pressure pot. Don't drop it. That's not a good idea. We're going to take this and put this on. Now, this is a professional grade pressure pot that is used by industry people. You can go to these little cheaper places, I'm looking for a wrench here, and buy a pressure pot. Curtis said, think about it, you're going to be putting pressure into this pot, and as people know through some of the horrible news we've seen, these things can explode if there's a flaw in them or something else. So he said for risking his life, he wanted to spend a little extra money and go with something that is much higher quality, because this is going to be inflated. We're going to pressurize it with 80 pounds per square inch. That's a lot of pressure. And if this thing gave way, you can imagine what the results would be like. So I'm just tightening this down. I'm not killing it, but I got to get it down there enough so it makes a good seal. So there we go. Now here comes the fun part. Where is it? Oh, I got my hose. So turn this where you can see it. there's my pressure gauge right there. This little doohickey right here is how I hook up my air compressor to it. So I'm going to turn this on, let air in, and you'll see the gauge go up. I want the gauge to go up to 80 pounds. And a little trick I found out, trying to get exactly on 80, I've got to go like to 81. Because once I shut it off, it goes back down just a tick. I don't know why, but it does. But anyway, so this is the easy part now. We just wait 35, 45 minutes, depending on the thickness of your pour, for this to go through the pressure process. All the bubbles are going to come out. The heat and the chemicals are going to make it into a solid piece of epoxy into Alumilite that you can use. So in the meantime, while that is doing its job, we're going to get on the lathe and start making the top from a blank already made. One of the cool things is that Alumilite can be cut on a bandsaw, table saw, anything you want. And this is a blank I made earlier that, if you can look up, see if I can get a light in here between here, you can see through it a bit. That's what I was after. I wanted to have that translucent look. So this is the one with 4 drops of color in 16 ounces. Yeah, and a little bit of that silver stuff. The weird thing is, you notice this pattern right here? That doesn't exist when you get into the blank. This is just some puddling on the top. I thought that was so cool that I was gonna find that when I cut it open, but it didn't happen. It's gonna look more like that, but polished. But anyway, I'm just setting this up. I'm gonna do a little resaw on this so I can get this thin enough to make a top blank out of, because I can get 2 3-inch blanks out of this, so I can get 4 total by cutting it in half. I'll turn this on. I'll very carefully feed this in. Let's see, 5 fingers first, we'll see how I wind up. You better make sure you have a dust system running, because this stuff is really fine and it'll clog up your saw if you don't have it being sucked up somewhere. There we go. Turn that off. And that's cool. See how it cuts? Really neat. So anyway, I'm going to take this, I'm going to put a circle on here, and then we're going to cut the circle out on the bandsaw too. Then we're going to go to the lathe. Okay, put my 3-inch circle on here. And there's room over here. I could put another one on, but I'm not going to do that just yet. Let's go back to the bandsaw and trim this out. One thing, I keep saying let's go to the lathe right after the next step, and I keep lying because we got to drill a hole in here that's going to hold the dowel too. So many steps. Okay, we're just going to come in here, and again, this cuts so beautifully. I'm using a 1/4 inch with bandsaw blade, so it gives me the ability to make tight radiuses. But you'll see in a minute when we turn this that this is very forgiving stuff, so it's a lot easier to work with than the industrial acrylic we've used in the past. And that's because this was designed with the intent of it being cut with hand tools and stuff, so the material strength is a little bit less. This is still tough stuff. You can't really break it, but it doesn't chip as much, which is really nice. So there we go. Beautiful round circle. I've got my blank clamped onto the drill press. I've got a 3/8 inch drill bit. We're just going to go in. It cuts really cool. Although you'll find out in a little while, these little shavings can be a PIA. Okay, so I got to go a little deeper. I just didn't quite get it all. There we go. Okay, now we're through. I was going to make originally the shaft for the top out of acrylic, but trying to turn, oops, that's the wrong piece. Trying to turn a perfect 3/8 inch dowel is almost impossible. So I'm going to go with cherry. Somebody already went to the trouble of making this exactly right. I don't want to have to redo all that work. So I have some medium cyanoacrylate here, and I am just going to err on the side of kill it with kindness. So I want to put some in the hole, and then I want to put some on the shaft here, because I have to pound this thing through, and so obviously it's going to get scraped off as it goes through, so I want to make sure there's some contact in there somewhere. Also, if you notice this little apparatus I have, this is my handy dandy top depth gauge. There's a hole in there about 1.25 inches deep, so I can take this, center it up on the hole, grab a mallet and go whack, 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 and when it bottoms out, I know I'm at the perfect depth for the end of my top. Okay, well the glue's set up on our top, and now how do we hold that thing on the lathe? Well, we're going to use a Collet Chuck and a drawbar. This is the drawbar, this is the Collet Chuck. You can see it's got slits on the side. So when this pulls back into the headstock, these slits will smash together. And so then they pinch down on the piece of wood that's inside. So it kind of grips it that way. The way you make one of these is you just get yourself some all-thread rod and you cut it to length for your headstock on your lathe. So in other words, this has to go through both sides, right? And then this is a, I'm trying to remember what they call this. But anyway, it is a threaded nut that actually goes into a hole that you drilled, and these little prongs hold it in place. So I'm going to just put this on here and try to get back on here. But anyway, it fits into these, it pulls tight and goes into the wood. I shouldn't have pulled that out probably. But believe me, it works. But anyway, as this screws in, it pulls this into the wood so everything goes tight. I'm going to take this end off real quick. And we're going to take this and put it through the headstock now. And so as it goes through the headstock, you can see the rods right there. And so this will thread into it. Okay. So I'm going to thread this in as deep as it will go on this end. And then what I do is I make sure that my headstock is locked in here, and I spin the handle here, and it screws on tighter and tighter. Now I don't want to go real tight right now because I have to take my top and put it in there. I actually left the sticker on here because it's not going to get in the way, but also it gives me a little bit of thickness, so it actually makes this grip a little bit better. See, it's kind of hard to even get it in there. So now we're going to draw it down. And here we go. Whoops, I lost my screw thing. It popped out again. There we go. Okay. So you see it's pulling it in. And as it pulls it in, those lines get really tight. You can see how they're getting, and they're pinching. So you gotta give it some good cranks because what you don't want is for this to spin while it's inside there. So that looks pretty good. So I want to bring up my tailstock now. And I gotta slide that in there. I have a live center which has different tips that you can put on and put off for different purposes. This one has a little cup in there. The cool thing about the cup is it will center the shaft of the top in here. So I'm not putting a point in there, so I don't have to worry about that. So as I bring this up, you can see I can, whoops, get a little closer. If you watch right here, you can see how it goes in and it centers up the end right there. And I'm just putting light pressure on there, lock that down, and now we'll start turning this sucker. I've been rounding this out a little bit just to get rid of some of the boring parts. And I'm using a regular spindle gouge. And you can see the shavings that come off are pretty cool on this once you get into the solid piece of acrylic. And it's just like turning wood. You don't want to take a big cut. It will chip a little bit if you do take a big cut. But you take a nice controlled cut, looks good. Now I'm trying to get the best tool finish on here I can because sanding these is not problematic. If this is a pin blank or something like that, they're really easy to sand. But when we're doing a top, we're talking about big flat surfaces, so you got to be pretty careful on that. But anyway, I'll show you how we flatten out the surface on this. And I'll just show you on one side because both sides are the same. And I just want to thin this out a little bit and get it flat. So we're going to turn her back on. I'm going to take my tool on the side and do a pull cut. I'm going to bring the speed up a little bit. And I'm going to pull in like this and just above center just a little bit. And pull back and forth. And you start getting more and more shavings, the smoother the surface gets. And the wild thing is these shavings do that. They can be a pain in the butt. But basically, look how they shave out. Look at that, cool. And what's really wild is it's all one piece, so that's what it does. It's one piece, and it goes and gets back on the wood, so you have to stop every now and then and pull the stuff off. So that is part of the process. But anyway, I'm going to flatten out both sides. But before I do that on this one, I'll just show you real quick. I want to come in here And turn it off and just turn this just a little bit, because this is the same on the other side, just a little different shape. But turning the top is so easy. All I want to do is just whittle the wood a little bit and make this transition from the top into the wood. So I'm just doing that. And all I'm doing is a little pull cut, and this is going to be the tip of the top that touches the ground. And so I have that shape already. That's as far as I want to go. If I go any further, the wood gets too thin and everything starts to shake. So I'll mess with this a little bit more, get some more shape. I'll do the other side. I love the way that stuff looks. And then we're going to show you how you finish and prepare the surface. Now I've worked my way through up to 400 grit, and there's a bit of a process to this because I've got the lathe going at a fair speed for sanding the wood here. To sand the acrylic though, I have to lower this way down because heat is not your friend on this. Now, there are people I've seen who will wet sand this stuff, but all the projects I've seen them wet sanding on it's all acrylic, no wood. So my concern is if I wet sand it here, I'd be getting water into the wood, which wouldn't be so cool. But anyway, that is Abranet. This is Micromesh, which is a diamond encrusted. Oh, let me turn this light off, sorry. It's one of my favorite toys right now. It's by KJH or KJR. It's the Aurora light. And it really is bright for us old guys. But anyway, hurts the camera. But anyway, there's diamond in here. So this is 1500 grit. They use this in auto finishing and stuff. And when you take it up to acrylic, it does a beautiful job of sanding. And what this will wind up doing is putting a polish on here, really fine shine. But I have to work my way from 1500 grit all the way to 1200 grit. And so that takes a little while. So again, like watching paint dry, sanding is the same thing, so I'm not going to bore you with that. So I'll work my way through the different grits, and then we'll polish this and put a finish on the wood also. But again, heat and speed are not your friends. So especially on this edge, I'll even bring this down a little slower, because anytime you see white show up on the edge, it means you're starting to melt it a bit. And that's probably why wet sanding works a little better, because it keeps it cooler. But anyway, I just want to make sure I get out all the scratches from the previous grit, and then move on to the next. I'm putting a few drops of Doctor's Woodshop Pen Plus friction polish on a paper towel right now, because this stuff is for the wood. So we're going to turn the lathe on at the slow speed I was at, and I'm just going to do the wood part, right? So I'll go over here and put it on the wood here. And now this is where it's going to pick up a bit, so Brian will back up just a bit so we don't splatter the lens. There we go. This is where the friction part happens. Now I am putting this on here because I want to protect the wood, because the next step is to polish the acrylic. You can see how it's getting a shine right there. The heat is, through friction, putting a really nice surface on there, a nice hard surface. So we are protected, which is great. So the next thing I want to do, we'll throw that, well, we'll just put it over there. We'll get this paper towel. And now what I'm going to use, you can get several different products. This one is Hut Ultra Gloss for plastic. And it is also kind of like a friction thing, but it is a polishing compound. So we're going to turn this way down, because I don't want to get this all over. And we're just going to touch it to it, get a little bit on there, get a little on here, get on this side. So now, again, we'll watch out, don't splash Brian. Bring that up, and we're going to start just using this, and I'm putting equal pressure on both sides, by the way, so don't break this. And we're just going to hold this in here until we build a really nice shine. And so it'll come on the edge, and you can see you're getting a really cool reflection now. Isn't that looking good? I mean, that is incredible. So I have just one more step to do, and that's to part this thing off here, but isn't that beautiful? Now we're ready for the circus act of the whole show here. We're going to nip this down. This exposed wood, by the way, I'm going to just touch up with a little bit of hand wax, and it'll match the color, and it's no big whoop. You don't have to have friction polish on there. You can hear it's already broken free. One more little cut to clean up that tip so it's nice and sharp. Set the tool down. Here's the circus act. Bring the tool rest out with one hand. Try not to hit this in the process. Bring this back up. Okay, now here we go. And don't turn the lathe off when you do it. Okay, this is the fun part. So I'm trying to one-hand turn. I'm using my fingers from my left hand to hold the top in place so it doesn't wobble, and to hold the tool so it doesn't skate, like that. Just a little bit of sanding on these tips and a little bit of wax and we're good, so it's no big deal. There we go, we're gonna part this off. There we go, it's off. Now before we can see if this spins, we gotta take care of this here. We've been cooking for a while, right? So we're gonna relieve the pressure. There it goes. The feel of wind in your hair. Yeah, well, I used to remember how that felt. Okay, we're down to 0. So now we're gonna see how tightly I crank this sucker on here and how hard it'll be to get these off. So this has actually been in here a little bit longer because it took us a while to shoot and do the top, but that doesn't really hurt it because it's, if you take it out too soon is your only issue. So these come loose, they fall off. There we go, we take Mr. Top off here. We bring this out. Okay. It's stuck. There we go. So here's our blank. The next thing you do is, where did I put it? I got my drill right here. Put this in reverse. So we just take this, take out all the screws. Take a little bit of a mallet. That pops off. And then it's easier just to kind of come this way. Whack it a couple times. And you can see, there it is. This is the deepest one I've made so far, and that came out awesome. That is great. But the most important thing of all is, does the top spin, right? Let's give it a shot and see how it goes. Ha! Beautiful. So that is how you make an Alumilite acrylic cherry wood top. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something from the process. So until the next time on wood turning, keep spinning.
The American Beauty Tim uses was made by Robust Tools. All our lathes have a 7-year warranty. Our tool rests feature a hardened rod on top. Lots of sizes to fit your lathe. Robust, because the making matters.
Thompson Lathe Tools. Welcome to a new level of professional wood turning tools. Made by a wood turner for wood turners.